Good evening and welcome to the first of two Beyond the Front Page shows we have tonight for you, produced by Cayuga Community College for the spring 2017 semester and broadcast on Time Warner Communications, Verizon's Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, as well as played on the college's radio station WIN 89.1. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Hopefully you have fully dug out from Storm Stella from last week. We unfortunately had to cancel our program last week and move some things around. City Manager Jeff Dygert will be with us in 2 weeks, and Cayuga Community College President Brian Durant will be rescheduled for next week. So we hope you will tune in for those shows. Tonight, though, we are delighted to have with us Edward Myers-Hayes, who is the President and CEO of Cayuga Centers, formerly known as the Cayuga Home for Children for many of us who are over the age of 30, I think that is, that has had a tremendous growth under his leadership over the last 2+ decades. In the fall of 2016, Cayuga Centers kicked off a capital campaign, and we've asked him on to talk not only about the capital campaign, where they are, how you can give, but also about what the agency provides for this community in the region, as well as its economic impact, something you may not be thinking about when you think of Cayuga Centers. I would say welcome back, because you've been here before.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Guy. Thank you for having me.
Delighted to have you. For those who may not know, what is Cayuga Centers?
Cayuga Centers is a human services agency that provides services for families, children, and individuals in the child welfare, juvenile justice, developmental disabilities, mental health, and unaccompanied children immigration systems.
Okay, so let's take it chunk by chunk, because you have operations here in New York. Did you open in Rochester?
We're in 7 different counties in upstate New York.
Okay.
We're in New York City, we're in Palm Beach County, Florida, and we're in Delaware. We basically have 5 main things that we go and we do. We have a residential treatment campus, residential treatment center in Auburn, where we work with youth who are placed by contiguous counties really between Albany and Niagara, between the Canadian border and Pennsylvania, for treatment. Most of these kids have had family issues. Many of them have been subjected to all types of trauma, are having trouble going and living lives where they stay out of trouble with the law and the like, where they stay out of trouble with schools and the like, and counties are taking them into custody and placing them with us for intensive therapy to address the trauma, create healing, work with their families, and try to create greater functioning so the kids can go home and be part of the world again.
So let's talk about the Auburn. So that's at the Auburn campus, which is at the end of Hamilton Avenue.
Hamilton and Lake, yes.
Okay, so at that facility, how many people are employed?
Basically, our residential program itself goes and has 120 staff employed. We go and we operate 53 residential beds and 4 living units.
At that location?
3 of them are in that location, and 1 of them is just across the street from where we are now.
Right,
we have a group residence on Franklin Street, but it's all similar program and the like, working with kids who are placed by counties. Right now we're averaging about 7 months with kids, a lot of treatments. One of the things we've emphasized doing, we're the only place I know that has a 1-to-7 licensed therapist to kid ratio. So all of our kids are getting intensive therapy, trauma-based treatment at least twice a week. Some of our kids 3-4 times a week. And as we work to engage families, and a lot of people say you can't engage families, we're doing 65% of our families with weekly family therapy.
So you mentioned Delaware. So the first time I ever think of the word Delaware, besides Joe Biden, is for tax purposes. You still keep your corporate offices in New York,
We
am I
keep
correct?
our corporate offices in New York.
In Auburn?
In Auburn, New York. As a matter of fact, the last time I counted, there's 86 jobs that could be located any place in the country, with everybody telecommuting and this and that these days. Those 86 jobs are placed in Auburn.
Now, we did get a viewer question, and I want to couch this in the way it was formatted in the email. Occasionally, you do see in the Citizen, somebody leaves the facility and you're on the lookout for, not you, but law enforcement. That is not a lockdown facility, correct?
Okay.
I think the public doesn't understand. I have been. Okay. It's a beautiful...
You need a key to get inside. You need to twist the doorknob or push a panic bar to get outside. And unlike a lot of residential treatment centers that are in the middle of nowhere, we live in a single-family neighborhood, and we cannot put hands on to keep kids from leaving. Most of our kids have extensive
You're prevented
runaway.
from doing that.
Yeah, we're prevented
Okay.
from doing it with regulations and the like. We have kids who have extensive runaway histories, and so by our meeting the needs, we get our kids to go, and we get our kids to stay. We get our kids to commit to themselves. I wish people would come and do tours, and many of our kids who are leaving are going to parents, and those are the ones that we don't worry about as much because we'll engage the parents and we'll get them back. We do worry about the kids who run into people who want to harbor them, and usually there's a price for harboring kids, which is taking advantage of these kids who have been victimized already. But we'll work. Kids have to make a choice to be with us. One of our cottages is specifically aimed at girls who would be in extremely secure facilities. And one of the girls one day said to me, "It's hard here because every day I have to make a choice to stay and to commit to myself." But if you contain kids and they don't have to make choices, when they leave placement, how are they going to make good choices to sustain them the rest of their lives?
It was an interesting question. It wasn't a hostile. They just said it happens all the time. But I guess my thought was, having been in the facility, is it is easy to get out, but it's more so that this is a system where, in many cases, this was not the child's first choice to come to Auburn necessarily, and whether it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend or they met somebody at the mall. I mean, do they go into the
There's also
Auburn?
the type of thing that if you look at other places, shortly after I got there 22 years ago, Pat Shea, who was then the youth detective, felt really strongly about runaways and said, "Would you ask permission of parents so we could publicize runaways?" Any place else I've worked, and most of our other places that are operated by other agencies, won't ask parents to sign consents to publicize runaways, and they're like, that was important to the Auburn police, so we do it. So part of our doing it and working with the police is we appear in the paper, as opposed to other places, it's more under the radar. But unfortunately, it's systematic with kids, because whenever kids put in placement, they're placed by court order, and they have to make choices. And that's what we're trying to do, get them to change their choices.
In a facility, and I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges, because it's most likely isn't apples and oranges, but where Hillside is located and the type of facility that Hillside is out on County House Road, which is locked down, much different setup.
The facility people are most familiar with is called a residential treatment facility that Hillside runs, and Hillside runs well. And that's a secure facility, yes. We're not a secure facility.
So did you say 53 beds?
Yes.
So when those students can be from age what to what?
We go, and as one of the nice things that happens is the Auburn School District provides services on ground, which also pays for about 20 jobs in the Auburn School District.
So that's where I was going
none
with
of
this.
which comes out of the taxpayer money or anything like that. They want us to take 7th to 11th grade because they can't do right. But one of the wonderful things, because of our partnership with the Auburn School District, is all of our kids are in region earning courses. And I've run campuses where kids have done really well in the campus school that the agency runs, and then the school district they go back to refuses to take their credits, which is like kicking the kid in the shin. I mean, it's just
You're not
really
helping the
hard
child in the
for
end.
the kid, because the kid's falling further behind. Our kids go home with real credits, and Auburn has, with us, pioneered a credit recovery program where many of our kids are coming in as a 17-year-old freshman. And if you come in as a 17-year-old freshman, you're not going to graduate. But we're able to go and get them back up to junior year, get them back up to where they need to be, where they go home, so they have a more realistic chance of finishing school.
And how long do they normally stay on your campus?
About 7 months.
And
it will range from 4 months to about 12 months. We think that kids staying more than a year, treatment needs to have a beginning and an end. Kids need to accomplish things, feel as if they're accomplishing things, and move on.
So as I said at the top of the show, many of us knew this as the Cayuga Home for Children, which was founded when?
1852, but that wasn't the original name. Original name was Cayuga Asylum for Destitute Children. In about 1913, it was softened up to Cayuga Home for Children. I guess it had been informally called that for a number of years before that.
And then most of the operations moved to Hamilton Ave in the 1950s?
53, 54.
And you are celebrating your what year with the agency?
I'm going to be there 22 years this summer.
Okay.
June, I guess, is my anniversary.
What is your overall budget for the overall agency?
We keep changing, and we just added $21 million of program. If I were to analyze it, we're about $67 million this year.
So who pays
That's
you?
annual.
Where do you get your money?
Well, our residential program, counties that place kids with us go and play with us. We have treatment
So if
foster
I'm in
care.
Cattaraugus County and I want to send Johnny Jones to your place,
You're paying for us. You're also paying the Auburn School District over and above what you pay us for the educational placement. If you're placed in any of our treatment foster care programs in New York State, it's counties. We have treatment foster care in New York City also, where New York City and its Administration for Children's Services pay. In Palm Beach County, the state of Florida is paying, and Delaware, the state of Delaware is paying.
So why did you move? I understand we'll talk about Harlem, and we'll talk about Rochester in a second, but why did you end up going to Palm Beach, Florida, and why Delaware?
Popular demand.
Okay.
Basically, the states came to us and said, you're doing the kind of effective programs we don't see other people doing. Would you go and would you expand to us?
So the first expansion outside of Auburn, was that Rochester or was it New York?
Actually, I was a $2.2 million agency when I got here in 95. In 97, we expanded to Seneca, and by 99, we had expanded to Rochester. We originally went to New York City subcontracting a program we did to another agency in 2003, and we, as that agency then went out of business, established our first office in New York City in 2005. And those years we continued expanding in central New York and maintaining a presence in New York City. And growth really began happening in 2013, 2014, when the federal government and the Office for Refugee Resettlement asked us to go and do transitional foster care for the children who were fleeing from Central America and a lot of the violence and victimization that was happening in Central America. And the feds were picking them up, but the feds didn't know what to do with kids, so they developed a group of agencies such as ours to go and to do short-term care while qualifying sponsors where the youth could be sent to sponsors.
And are those done in upstate New York or are they done elsewhere?
Well, as all of these kids speak Spanish and some of them don't speak New York, you need a bilingual workforce. And many of the places went and did congregate care facilities. We took a different approach with the feds, and we decided to do foster homes. And so we recruited bilingual foster parents to go and to work with kids. And we would get kids 7 days a week at all hours of the day, do a medical exam, do a mental health exam, put them in a foster home, work on stabilizing them, do tutoring for them, doing acclimation for them while qualifying sponsors, and then sending them to sponsors. And we began in the spring of 14 opening 296 beds for the feds. That contract has just been renewed for another 3 years, and it's been renewed for 600 beds.
And where will those be in the United States?
Those are all between the Bronx and Harlem in New York City.
Total segue here. With the president's actions in regards to immigration, would that have any impact on what the work you're doing?
I think we're all waiting and we're all seeing.
Figure out what the courts say. Okay.
I think that a lot of agencies had to ask the question, as we go into an uncertain future, what do we do as an agency? And many people make choices that maybe we should limit exposure. Maybe this is a good time to get out of the business. maybe we lack that kind of common sense, but part of our fundamental mission is not to serve the people that everybody else wants to serve, but to serve the people where there's no people lining up to serve them. And so we basically saw this as an opportunity to go and to do more with these children. And our belief is that we're taking some risk as an agency, but somebody needs to serve these children. They're incredibly damaged. You know, you have a 4-year-old, okay? You know, as we talk to our 5-year-olds, and we have folks from weeks old to 17 that we're taking care of. We had 6 kids who were born to us because their teenage moms were pregnant, and during the 4 weeks they were with us, gave birth last year and this and that. But, you know, with our kids who are 5, as our therapists talk to them and assess things, 85% of our kids over 5 have seen someone murdered in front of them. If these kids stay in Central America, they're being put into, you know, sex trafficking. They're being forced to work as slaves in plantations or in factories. They're being pushed into gangs. They're being made into drug mules and the like. And their relatives are pushing them away from the countries because they're afraid of all the violence that's happening.
So you just mentioned 600 young people in that particular program. So how many young people do you see in a given year?
We'll probably hit about 10,000 or more this year. With the 600, that's 600 beds that we maintain for the feds at any one time. And last year, our length of stay was 22 days. So pretty much we could be turning over that population in a month. We go and in our, you know, foster care, we go and have, you know, 30-some beds in Central New York. We have 50 beds in New York City. We're in the process of opening, you know, 24 beds, you know, in Florida, opening 12 beds in Delaware. And our community-based interventions, and we have contracts with 6 counties throughout Central New York. We send therapists into the home to stabilize families and keep families together. We're working with about 2,500 families a year in those programs. And another part of what we're doing is services for people with developmental disabilities. We do a lot of respite work, particularly for individuals who are living with their parents, who have a lot of need for individualized monitoring, individualized, you know, coaching and the like, because, you know, they may not have impulse control or safety awareness and the like. And a family that's keeping a family member with a developmental disability living with them are incredibly heroic people. And if by throwing in a few hours of respite a week, we can make that more doable, that's so much more important because it gives families greater choices. And with our service coordination, which is a case management for folks involved in the, you know, developmental disability system, several years ago, it looked like everything was going managed care, and a lot of agencies pulled back. We were serving a few hundred people then. We moved up, and we're going to hit 1,200 people that we're serving soon. And we've gone from, you know, 1 or 2 counties to about to be in 5 counties. So on all kinds of fronts, we're saying, where are people underserved? Where are people not being served? And can we go and can we serve people, and can we serve them with quality? Because people don't need bad services. People only need high quality.
So there was, at one time, there was talk about you moving into Texas. Have you given that more thought, or is that service area?
We were thinking about doing for the program for the feds in Texas, a type of reception center type of program for them. And Texas was a mixed reaction. There was a whole lot of strong feelings. The city we were going into, that would have been a whole lot of jobs for that city. The city council wanted us very much. The governor, because we were dealing with immigrants, was very, very down on us coming there and threw obstacles in our way. This program may happen. We may actually hear in the next couple of weeks if it happens. It's going to happen at a state in the Northeast if it happens.
And you have one in mind?
We have a location that is picked out. we don't want to talk a lot about the location until it gets funded. But believe me, if it gets funded, we'll announce it.
All right, we'll love to have you on here
And
about
if it gets funded, instead of being a $67 million agency, at that point we'll be 100 to 150 million, because it will grow us that much.
So let's talk about a little bit about structure. So you're a not-for-profit.
Yes, 501c3 charity.
Because that's going to be important in about 2 minutes. How large a board do you have?
We have 15 members on our board.
And how many of them are from Auburn and Central New York?
About 9 of them are from Central New York right now. 6 of them are from New York City, and we're certainly doing a lot of thinking as we go when we get into other states. At what point do we expand the board to it? I mean, you talk about virtual boards. We had a reception in New York City about 2 weeks ago, and it was the first time as a couple of my board members from Central New York came down that they actually saw people other than through video conferencing.
So, sadly, back in the fall, you lost your longtime board president, a good friend of ours.
Fred Richardson,
Fred
great
Richardson.
man,
He had been
great
with
man.
you for how long?
Fred had gotten on the board sometime in the 80s. I mean, Fred was well established on the board by the time I showed up in '95, and he was an incredible partner. He basically taught me so much, and as I was younger then, it may be hard to believe, and some people might say impetuous, Fred was somebody who asked really good questions and who helped me think very clearly, and it was a great partnership. There's very few days I don't think about him.
So one of the things that you were doing in the fall was kicking off. Your agency was going to recognize 2 people. You were one. Congratulations on that.
I came on Fred's coattails.
Well, he
Fred
was the
one.
So he, and unfortunately, it was about, I want to say about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because we were both at the funeral for him with his family. It was just a couple weeks before your event in October. But one of the things that you were doing there, and that was one of the reasons you were doing this, was to kick off this capital campaign that we started with. What exactly is the capital campaign? What does it encompass?
We're growing. I mean, when I go and say that we have 80-some positions that could be placed anywhere, they're in Auburn, I mean, we had 40, 45 staff when I showed up. At this point, we're going to break 800 staff fairly soon. You know, 300, some of those staff are based in Auburn, and we just need more space. I mean, people need.
So how much are you trying to
place
raise?
We're trying to go and raise $200,000 altogether from individuals and from businesses, and supplement that with giving from foundations. We've
is there a
raised
match
about
in there?
$130,000 so far, and Emerson Foundation was very generous and gave us $100,000. We bought, we've been down the block from our campus for probably about a dozen years now. What people may remember is the old Hogan Milk Barn.
I do remember the Hogan.
Before that, as you were dating people and the like, one of my old board members, unfortunately no longer with us, Mike Cuddy, told me stories of when it used to be the ice house.
Right.
And I guess when Mike was young, they used to cut ice, and in what we now use as a gymnasium has like 18 inches of caulk in the walls, and they would store the ice there year-round.
So do you own that building, or is that something
We
you're
will own it before the year's over. We've reached an agreement to buy the building. We're hoping to
Because you had a
lessen the
training
mortgage.
facility in there at one point.
We
training
have
room.
the training facility there. We have a gym. We have recreation space. We've just added, a couple of years ago, respite space for developmental disabilities. Individuals are living with their families. We have a lot of offices over there and the like, and we're going to be doubling our respite space. We just also bought Kearney Avenue, and we're able to buy Kearney Avenue without a mortgage because of our capital
building
campaign.
on Kearney?
It's behind Seward School,
Okay.
and I guess when the nuns ran
So it's the
Seward
old
School,
nunnery.
it's the old nunnery.
Okay.
So if we want to be literate, we can now say to our staff, get thee to a nunnery.
So a couple of quick questions on the money that you're trying to raise. So if someone, because you are a 501c3, if somebody wants to give, they can send the checks to Cayuga centers, and you'll take them there, and
Or
they're tax deductible.
They can go onto our website, cayugacenters.org, and there's a support us button, and they can give nowadays online.
Okay, so with that, you have 100 from the Emersons, 130 you've raised so far. The campaign's not over, though.
No, we're
What's your
continuing
target
with
with
the
that, for
campaign.
200 plus the 100?
200 plus the 100.
And is the 100...
And we're talking to other foundations and hoping to do more as we talk to other foundations.
And is the 100 dependent upon, it's a
The
straight
100's
gift?
been used to buy the Kearney
okay.
building already. I mean, we were able to buy Kearney without a mortgage, and our goal is to take out as small a mortgage as possible to buy the property down the block from us, which we named after Fred. So it's the Frederick Richardson Center.
And people may not know this, that you have the house on Hamilton. The playground that is at the end of the block is yours.
Yes.
I know we've joked about...
We have a building next to our administration's the big old Victorian. And next to it, we own the building next to it where we have our finance and our IT. We have 3 cottages over there also, and we will be owning the Richardson Center down the block. We go and we have a group residence in Auburn, and on Fleming Street, we have a weekend respite day habilitation program site for individuals with developmental disabilities. And we, just bought Kearney Avenue, which is our Auburn property. We rent, 6 other offices throughout upstate New York, and we have 4 offices in New York City. We're a Park Avenue agency, though we're Park Avenue in the 120s and in the 130s, which is not the type of Park Avenue most people think about.
So you're in Harlem for most of your operations, am I correct on that?
Harlem and 1 office in the Bronx. They're all within a nice 1-mile area of each other.
And where we have just a minute or so left, when do you think you'll make the decision with the new siting, whether it's in the Northeast or somewhere else?
We're waiting on the feds.
Will that be dependent upon what the administration does?
If we're giving a contract, we will go and we will be growing again.
All right. We want to encourage people, if you have not read about Cayuga Centers, you can do so. And we've been delighted to have on for the last half hour their president and CEO, Edward Myers-Hayes. I want to thank you for joining us and giving us an update on the agency. We do encourage you to look at their capital campaign, see if you can help out with them. And we hope that you'll come back in to give us an update from time to time. I think it was about 2 years ago you were on last time. We'll be back in just a moment with another Beyond the Front Page with the YMCA's Kristen Unserino to give us an update on the YMCA, including issues recently raised about the parking and new visitors center being proposed by the City of Auburn in the state of New York in the sewer lot across from City Hall, as well as the services they provide to the community, including summer camp, one of my favorite subjects. We'll be back on Tuesday with 2 Beyond the Front Pages as well. The first show will feature the Women's Rights 19K Run with Generation Bank's Menzo Case and Katie McIntyre, who is running in this year's Boston Marathon. The second will feature Cayuga Community College President Brian Durant. He'll give us a college update. In the next several weeks, some of the guests that we have on Inside Government will include Senator John DeFrancisco. We hope to bring Assemblyman Bob Oakes in. Like I said, in 2 weeks we'll have City Manager Jeff Dygert, as well as Congressman John Cacco, as well as budget updates from the Auburn School District as they prepare for their school budgets. And at the end of beginning of May, we'll have our school budget forum. On Beyond the Front Page, besides the shows that I've already mentioned, we'll have the Auburn Education Foundation, local efforts on the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Major Palooza, and Seymour Library, among other topics. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your thoughts and questions or ideas for future guests to cozguytho@aol.com, or you can mail them by snail mail to Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. As we did tonight, we ask questions of our guests that we get in advance. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. I want to thank you for watching. Stick around. We'll be right back with another Beyond the Front Page.